Hey, welcome. My name's Steve Jaguar.
And I'm Mike Foster, and we got a packed show. We're going to be talking KubeCon, Endor emerges out of stealth, and I'll be giving the tool time today on Palaemon. Welcome to the show.
All right. Welcome once again to your Cloud Native Video newsletter for an impatient world. And we took a week off, and it was like everything happened.
Yeah, so many hacks, a lot of things breaking as we were putting
Money
together
everywhere.
a show. Yeah, when we were putting together a show, we were like, "What the heck's going on?" We had to cut some things. We're not used to doing that, so. Yeah, again, packed show. The links are in the description. Hit the little bell so you know when we go live. I believe the next show that we're going to be doing is the Saturday after KubeCon. Steve and I are hopefully going to be doing a duo in-person show. So look forward to our wrap-up. And I think speaking of which, we might as well just, before we get into general news, talk about KubeCon, what we're looking forward to, where we're going to be, for anybody that's watching, if you want to come find us.
Yeah, well, you're easy to find if you're at SecureCon.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. The co-located event. I'll be at the Stack Rocks booth / Red Hat booth, but mostly Stack Rock stuff. At the Cloud Native Security Con, I'll be giving a keynote bright and early, 5 minutes at 9:25. So you can come listen to me talk about network policies, and then OpenShift Commons as well if you have signed up for that. But I heard it's sold out, so I think that's a good sign for how many people are actually going to come to KubeCon this year.
Yeah, I imagine it's going to be pretty crazy, and I'm not going to say anything negative about Detroit because it's every tweet from Chris Short has been, Detroit is great.
So, I already have my pizza plays lined up.
Yeah, not that he's defensive. I am pretty excited. I've actually never been to Detroit, even though I grew up like a short drive away from it. And I worked for a company in Windsor, which is basically Detroit, but the Canadian boring version with less crime. And
more strip clubs.
And yeah, there is that. So I'm excited. I have a talk. I have the talk. The GitHub hack talk that I've been doing also got accepted. It's on day 2 though of SecureCon around 11 a.m. So if you've not seen me do that and you want to heckle me live, it's always different. I've added another thing to it, so it's kind of maturing and becoming more weird. I only have 30 minutes though, so I keep finding new ways to mess with it, and it's technically to get everything in, I need like an hour. So who knows what weird version it's going to be this time, but it's gonna end with exciting things. So come check me out there.
That's on Tuesday at 11 o'clock, right?
I think it's around Tuesday at 11 or 11:15. You'll find me. Well, there's only like 2 stages, I think, so it's not hard to find people at SecureCon. The exact opposite of KubeCon, where you can't find anything.
Which is why we like it so much. I like that there's 1 or 2 tracks. You go through it, you know exactly what you're getting.
Yeah, I preferred it massively in Valencia to, like, once SecureCon was done, I felt I could go home. But I actually, probably like yourself, I have to go work at the booth during KubeCon.
Yeah, and for those who
Um,
haven't heard, there's going to be a Cloud Native Security Con in Seattle, February, I believe, 26th to 28th next year. And I haven't seen KubeCon EU or North America and what they plan on doing, but I think that they're pulling this co-located day off of KubeCon and making it its own event.
it's all grown up.
Yeah, look at that. Security getting its own stage.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. I have to get that onto my map, because that's actually close enough that I'm not waiting a year, and I need to make sure I've got it locked into the calendar, so we get into that. And there's probably going to be already a CFP for it, I would think.
Yeah, that's a good point. I need to go check that and
Wait,
and report to it.
Ooh.
Oh yeah, I think it just dropped. I think a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, and so then I just sent it over to marketing. Like, we need funding. Let's go. We gotta be there.
Crazy. So do you have a Red Hat booth for the KubeCon proper?
So KubeCon proper has a Red Hat specific booth. Funny story. So if you go in as sponsors, there was like an over amount, and so we had to. They picked a random name out of the hat for like the one booth that didn't get like the top spot, and we got picked as like, so we got demoted in terms of sponsorship. Anyways,
oh wow.
So, yeah, subtle politics. I didn't realize that happens at these things. Like, like the 6 top tier booths, there's 7 sponsors, and so then they pulled it out, and we lost.
Oh
so,
wow! So we could have lost, because I think Prisma Cloud's one of them too.
I wouldn't be shocked. Yeah, and then because you get demoted, you didn't get the best booth in the demotion either, because they already picked the booths for the tier.
Ah no, where are they? Somewhere in the back?
No, it's not that bad. It's just like kind of a crappy process. I didn't even think that was possible, but
that's very funny. That is a crappy process. Oh wow, when you have too much sponsorship. Well, if it makes you feel any better, even though the Prisma Cloud are the daddy here, has a big booth at the start when you first walk in, and we'll have all sorts of crazy going on. My booth, I'm at the Chekhov booth, so I'm at the open source booth. So we're not doing Bridge Crew. We're doing just the open source as its own booth. But as a result of that, if like this is the vendor landscape and all the good booths are here, we're like up here in the top smallest corner closet here. Nice. But it's near the coffee. So you want to find me, hunt down the coffee shop, and I'll be right there.
Very cool. Yeah, it's a big event. I was looking at the map. It's massive. I mean, we went to Reinforce, and it's even, what do you say, double or triple that?
Yeah, I think maybe double. I don't know. I have to see, like, what's the scale like? It's hard to figure out.
Yeah, that's big. True. But yeah, so first sessions. Let's go real quick into that.
Sessions. I highlighted my sessions, and I've got them mounted. So I'm going to do this. So it's going to be, not that you can read it, because who can read blue on black on blue? It's not that hard. My at a glance is that there's a whole lot of like SBOM and supply chain. Like, it was bad last time, but now it's like, how much can you talk about SBOMs? I'm probably not going to any of those.
And there's 2 of mine at the top right there that I wanted to call out. Was the the control plane one with our friend Andrew Martin. I think you were going to pick, right?
I haven't actually. I'm free for that. So I was originally going to be at the booth, but I'm not now. I'm done at 3, so I can go straight there.
So that was one. And then using eBPF superpowers to generate Kubernetes security policies, I thought was really interesting. I want to see that, just because we use eBPF for our sensor. Would be very cool. And this is partially what Cilium has been trying to push, right, with a lot of their updates from last KubeCon. Yeah,
I think that might be a nice follow-on. Mine seems really boring by comparison, because I want to understand the salsa fresca stuff. So it's kind of part of, like, I have to do that at work. So it would be good to go catch this one and meet these people, because I keep crossing conversations with some of them. This one I can't go to, but I'm going to try to sneak away and do it. But I think I actually have a talk at our own booth. Oh no, that Prisma Cloud booth then. But I like it, so I'm all salsa'd up. But then, hack back. Let's learn security with CTFs. Louis Denham Perry, who used to be at Control Plane and run the capture the flag with Andy, is now at Chain Guard, and he's still talking CTFs and with Isovalent. So I picked that one. Anything in here that was yours?
I think there was one more. I had a couple at the SecureCon, but I think that goes without saying. A lot of the security specific ones, the 201, 301, 401 content are going to be at Cloud Native Security Con.
Yeah.
A lot of SBOMs. I'm really interested to see if there's been some consolidation around what we actually want to do going forward with them, especially with the new legislation. The run as root, the non-root user namespaces in K8s is interesting because I think you're going to start to see, let's say, more very segmented Kubernetes examples where you basically detach the control plane and you're just sectioning off like micro K8s to everybody by whatever they want. And I think this actually really helps developers, as you'll see in our developer tool Palaemon coming up, to just say, hey, here's your user namespace, your specific thing. Yes, we have a control plane that's managing it. Operations team has it all sectioned off, but it's easy to set up, deploy, and then, if you have monitoring tools or anything like that, it's all just, very hyper segmented for the different groups. So I'm kind of curious to see how that breaks out.
You may have convinced me to go there instead of there at the same time.
We'll go take notes and then we'll compare on Saturday.
Yeah, all right. That sounds like a great plan. Perfecto.
Cool.
Anyway,
if there's any sessions that we missed that you think we should check out, leave them in the chat and we'll try to report back to you. Otherwise, all these videos tend to go on YouTube pretty quickly. I believe they're still getting recorded, right? Because there's the whole virtual event too, right? So
it is.
Everything will be
rare. I go and watch the recordings though.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Sometimes it's nice. It depends if something's feature rich, then it'll pop up in our chat. Anyways, on to the general news.
Good.
So it's the first general announcement. This will happen at KubeCon too, but Istio sails into the CNCF as what it passed. There's a sandbox incubation. It's now I forget what the term is.
It's incubating.
It's incubating. Okay, so it got past sandbox. Now it's an incubating, which I'm not shocked by, but but incubation to acceptance is the hardest pass. It's the hardest.
Yeah. Standard. Well, didn't it get a lot of grief because it wasn't CNCF for a while?
Yeah. And it wasn't the CNCF, but at the same time, there were so many different groups working on it that it kind of was like you had all the major hyperscalers and their teams helping with it. I think one of the issues was just accepting contributions, working upstream. There's a whole process that has to be set up for the CNCF, and if you can't get the different hyperscalers to agree on it, then it becomes a pain, right?
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. But I mean, once it's in the CNCF like it is, it's just going to fly up the chain, isn't it? Once it gets through all.
It's a lot more visibility. The weekly or monthly meetings go on the CNCF meeting chart too, right? So you get a lot of traction that way. But congrats to them. I know that takes a lot of work. And yeah, look forward to graduation.
Little hat. Next one. This was an article. There's a 2-part series. Maybe it's a bit small. Let me boost it a little bit. Cristiano Corrado. Series of articles on application security at Wise. And I like these sort of series where, well, this is what we do. Because having transparency into what you're using to secure your internal environment. I go to some events where you get to see the war stories from actual people using tools. I really like other conferences like DevOps Enterprise Summit where it's only people talking about how. So anytime I see anything like that, I'm pretty happy. And then I was really happy when I rolled down and saw software composition analysis was the first thing that they started with, because there's often an argument, particularly in the AppSec world, about do I get static analysis or do I use a pen testing tool? Like what's the low barrier to entry, high value form of automation that isn't going to make all my developers mad? And for the most part, SCA, I think, is the way forward.
And I believe they used 4 or 5 open source tools, I think, in this article.
It's really open sourcey. It's like, it almost just started off saying, our application security journey with no budget at all.
Yeah, nice.
Because
Thoughts on that?
that
What
is,
would you have done with no budget? Do you start with open source tools? Do you start with a paid product?
I start with open source tools to demonstrate value and then use that value to get budget.
Hmm.
And then I would try to buy something that is a more of a consolidated platform. I would probably end up going down that route. I've used Defect Dojo before. I used to hate Defect Dojo because it just was not, it didn't click with my brain at all for open source vulnerability management. And it's better now. It's an OWASP tool. So OWASP has 200 projects, right? They're going to have something for doing just about everything. But I'm still not a big fan of OWASP. Sorry, not OWASP. I'm a big fan of OWASP. I'm wearing an OWASP t-shirt, crying out loud. Of Defect Dojo, I just find it doesn't prioritize for you. It doesn't like vulnerability management has been very much aligned with security theater. Like, look at all our vulnerabilities. Look, we've done all that. Like, but it's not. It doesn't. I don't think it's particularly actionable. But it's free.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a bunch of. He's got Snowflake in there. Like,
and there's a part 2 you said as well.
Yeah, there is a part 2. We're not going to get into part 2, but there's a link I think down at the bottom that takes you to part 2. I believe. Yep. Yeah, he's a CI/CD part 1 and part 2 as well. See, I gotta go check that out.
Yeah, so and you were also just at an event too with an AWS representative, right? Who's giving you a breakdown, something similar about what they do internally.
Yeah, that was a far more expensive version of what we do for application security. It was John Hammond, head of tech at Amazon, responsible for EC2, S3, like all the big things that you think about and the development behind it. He started off by saying, well, number one, here's how we secure the supply chain. Like, he wasn't talking about writing code, infrastructure, cloud formation. He was talking about making sure that the thing they deploy that powers everything and that all code goes through is super secure. He went through least privilege. That was educational, but also interesting to see that in this world of InfoSec, AppSec, he was talking about supply chain.
Mm-hmm.
This is where they started, and everyone's talking about securing supply chain now. And he made it sound like we've been doing it the whole time.
Yeah, I think there's always been an aspect to that. It just was never able to be accurately defined or mapped from beginning to end. I think that's always the issue whenever I talk like supply chain. One, very rarely can you say secure supply chain, because I think that's how secure are you?
Yep.
But yeah, everybody wants a pattern. Hey, if I use this application, am I secure? Well, no, because of XYZ, right? So things like Salsa really changed that, where, okay, you can evaluate this pattern against every part of that, life cycle, and then you can evaluate yourself a little bit better. So I think it's pretty cool. Yeah. Any chance that talk could be live? Is it posted, or do you have to come out to the next meetup?
No, it's not live.
We were come to the meetups.
We were I don't know if I say promised. It was suggested because they were recording talks that it would be recorded, and we got there and the camera guy had left. And normally we record our own, and so we weren't prepared either. So it's just lost.
Oh, too sad. All right.
It is.
And we've been talking about secure supply chain basically all year. I think the next article kind of sums that up in a nutshell here.
Yeah, this is I don't know. I sometimes, do I have respect for hackers? The Lazarus Group, North Korean hackers, hilariously profiled the thing somewhere down here as a ragtag bunch, like the A-Team or something. I've started to compromise open source targets. What a surprise. Specifically, I don't know if you ever use PuTTY. I used to use PuTTY all the time for SSH on my desktop. So get involved with PuTTY. Make sure there's a malware version of PuTTY. It's a very smart supply chain attack to take advantage of known open source projects, particularly ones that are not used by security savvy people. PuTTY is an awesome example of that. It's the default people use to try and remote log into something. But that is pretty fascinating that this is the approach that they're taking. This is maybe I'm not going to get into how they Trojanized PuTTY, but the idea, there's a lot of detail if you really want to know. I think that's more like a warning, right?
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of these are maybe you work at some research center, you do something, and you have a server on prem, and some new researcher comes in, hey, go and download Putty, and then here's how you set this up, and then they just go and click through a website. They get redirected to a different open source site, right?
Yeah.
It's very widespread and well used, so that's a good target if you're gonna spend the time.
It is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on.
I think we have one more before we get into even more crazy stuff.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, this is the lead-in before we get into the even crazier hacks. That's how much was going on over the last 2 weeks. Interesting to finally see this happen. Former Uber security chief convicted for concealing a felony. Not the actual hack itself that happened, I believe, in 2016, if you read the article, but the fact that there was a massive amount of cover-up pertaining to the decisions that were made too. So when they actually came in to investigate to say, hey, how did this hack happen? A lot of people were, let's say, not doing the right thing, which is kind of funny in and of itself, that instead of just admitting to certain things, you covered things up and got pegged for that. So I think if you read the article in terms of what they did to cover it up, it's pretty valid. I'm shocked this person had a job.
Yeah, but they moved on. This is so there was just before, actually, it's too bad we could have done maybe as breaking news, but it would have been hard to do. There's a guy, his name is Brian Hugley. He's a CISO for hire in America, and he has a channel on YouTube called Real CISO. And he did a short on YouTube where he just kind of pops up on the screen and goes, "What were you thinking?" Like to the Uber guy going, "It's not like you weren't, disclosing it was going to mean you wouldn't be able to get a job in the future because you got fired from Uber for this, and you ended up at, where did he end up? Like Cloudflare or something."
Yeah.
And it's like,
so here's my issue with it is, if he's technically capable, one of the things is they created a bug bounty to see if you could hack into Uber, and then it was done. But part of the bug bounty meant that they realized other people had gone in after and kind of exploited it. So even though they identified the hackers, they knew who got in, and then they paid them and got them to delete the like all of the content that they ripped. They didn't actually disclose it to anybody. They didn't tell people they had this vulnerability, and they didn't go through that process. So if you read it, they argue that they were legally told that because they identified the hackers, they didn't need to tell people, and which is just so odd. Then you wonder why things like GDPR and all the different reporting mechanisms exist nowadays, and it's to avoid dumb things like this. If you're exposed, you should have to disclose it.
This predated the beginning of GDPR.
Yeah, and I guarantee you this case was one of the things that was probably argued or something like it, right? Anyways, things that make you go WTF. Great segue, right?
Hey, my side is telling me my internet sucks. Let me know.
Yeah, it kind of does, but you're still here.
Okay, I'm still here. Well, just in case the screen share doesn't work.
No worries. We have the cybersecurity pathways. You put this one up originally in general news, and then I started reading it, and I was kind of like, what's going on here?
That was my impression, which is why I got in. It's kind of like, I thought it was kind of a boring subject, but I get a lot of people ask me about cybersecurity career paths. And so I thought, all right, I'll see what this guy's saying. But he was part of a book introduction, researching common career pathways. And I did think it's interesting that he's asking for advice on Twitter, and he's like obviously not getting the responses he wants for this research. But here was this first attempt at mind mapping roles into functions commonly found. And let me blur this up, because is this where you looked and went, what?
Yeah, it almost needs security career pathways. I understand what he's trying to do, but yeah, DevSecOps behind application security or grouped together. It almost feels like he did a search for all of the terms on LinkedIn, all the different posts, posted it, and then tried to sort it into broader categories, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's funny. This feels like it feels like somebody's SEO map on what articles connect to what, and then how wrong everything is out in the world of blogs.
Yeah, like so I think what you could have done is map career paths of the average person. So go into a security person and figure out, okay, did they go to school for something? What did they go to school for? And then watch as they go through all the way up to a CISO. And then maybe start to categorize the different jobs in color to be like, how much overlap is there? Like if you were always in vulnerability and threat management and then you ended up being a CISO, well, then that's a pathway, for example. Instead, sorry, go ahead. Is that where you're going to go with it?
No, you made me laugh because it's like the number of people I know in security. One of them started as an actor.
Yeah.
Another was an opera singer.
So but I think that's the benefit. That's what you should be showing. Like you don't need to start and be like the top computer science person. Yeah, I don't know. Washed up baseball player needs an asterisk there.
It is interesting though, and I even feel like even if I was creating it, it made me see the DevSecOps and go continually misunderstood. It shouldn't. It's a culturally communication thing. It exists across everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not an application security subdomain or anything like that. So that it needs some work, but
yeah. And here's the thing though, is you still see like DevSecOps engineers on LinkedIn. You'll see a DevOps engineer and it's just random titles, right?
Yeah, it is kind of nuts that people get, and it just muddies the waters even further. And a DevOps engineer is like, it's probably an SRE really if you want to get a real one.
Yeah, but they don't want to put SRE and they don't really know what they need, so they say that. And I think he argues, and he argues for more standardization, which I kind of agree with, but I think you have to let it happen naturally, right?
Yeah.
It's an emerging market. It's something that's relatively new. I mean, containers have only been around for Kubernetes has only been around for 7 years. So the whole DevSecOps cultural shift, you kind of have to let it settle.
Agreed.
All right. On to more supply chain talks. Steve, we got to get you some new internet out there across the pond.
I don't know what's going on. I don't have a VPN on. And I can see it going. It's fine.
Maybe we're gonna get like the new DDoS hack of the year on your networks or something like that.
I don't know what it's doing.
All right, let me bring you back up. Com100 chat provider hacked to spread malware in supply chain attack. You put this one up here, didn't you?
A threat actor. Did I?
I don't know, it might have been me, but I did read about this. So Com100 is a Canadian provider of live audio and video chat. It claims to have more than 15,000 customers across 51 countries. CrowdStrike found this one, actually. Said the attack made use of the desktop agent for Windows that was downloadable from the company's website. So not only was like you download the actual chat app and you were, let's say, hacked. I don't know the actual extent of it, but you can see this very cool breakdown, actually, if you scroll down. I love this. I think you got to scroll down a little bit more. Yeah, that little file breakdown where it's like explorer.exe to live chat to the command to reg. I like that breakdown. It's a cool little visual, no?
It is cool. CrowdStrike are always really good. I'm sure they probably made this diagram at detailing. So what I was trying to get my head around is, were they able to change the downloadable that existed on Com100's own website somehow?
My bet is they figured out maybe this is like an open source company or something like that. They figured out one of the packages and then were able to change it. Otherwise, I mean, 15,000 users across 50 countries is not that big relatively for a chat app.
Yep.
That's from Canada. The threat actor, likely with associations to China, has been attributed to a new supply chain attack. It's a JavaScript backdoor. So it's big, but also this is what you get when you download random chat apps. I don't know.
From the website that you're supposed to trust.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's also the Windows desktop agent, so I'm sure that also had a factor in it. Maybe it's an old Windows version, didn't get caught.
Sure.
a lot of the like Windows 11, the default security app, I forget what it's called, Defender or something like that, is really good at anything that runs an executable that's new. It flags it for me right away just because of the profile I've set up. So I feel like that would get caught on older versions.
Alrighty. My internet's back functioning again.
Yeah, I see your face is back. Welcome. Yeah, you had another data breach. I think. Okay, this one's definitely yours, right?
This one's definitely mine, and it's a total WTF because how a massive data breach has exposed Australia. Now, the only reason we didn't have this is because we took 2 weeks off, because this is about 2 weeks old. The WTF comes in down here where Chief Executive Kelly said she was devastated by the breach, and it was a sophisticated attack. And we have very strong cybersecurity until the press contacted the hacker, Jeremy Kirk. He claims no authenticator needed, all open to internet.
Wow.
The hacker who told the reporter, no, it was not complicated. I just took the data. So that was where I was like, right. So there we go. Australia's most prestigious breach.
40% of Australian users.
Yeah, that's pretty. Class action lawsuit is soon to be filed. It's a big deal. I imagine that we'll see a follow-up because with a sophisticated attack, like someone's going to get in trouble. It's one of the. It just seems like one of those ones. Very Equifaxy.
Ooh. Yeah, no kidding. That is a big WTF. That's massive.
It's just a reaction. It's just what are the odds? It's probably sophisticated, so we'll say it's sophisticated. And then the hacker's like, no, it wasn't.
Yeah, you know when you're reading an article and you're waiting for sometimes it's political and you're waiting for the contradictory statement, like 12 paragraphs down. Like I kept going through and I'm like waiting for it. Nope, it's just a huge screw up.
Nope, it's just we left the door open. Sorry.
Yeah. All right, let's go spend some money. Yeah, we have one close to our heart, actually. Endor emerges from stealth with 25 million.
We talked about this before. Are they really like, what does stealth mean? Because I knew Endor, and I know it was in stealth when I first heard about it. It was, I think, Varun Badwar, who was Redlock, who was Palo Alto Networks, left, created Endor, along with a bunch of very heavy hitters to address supply chain security. And this is like a year ago almost. Like it's a long time ago
that they first started. Getting money. And my guess when they talk about stealth, they must have some early adopters. So I haven't been at the early stage part, but you must have a plan, some sort of basic use case for your application. You go get funding, then you try to get some customers. You get a couple customers that are willing to talk about your product, and then you launch your GA1 with your user stories, your examples of how to deploy it, your demos. You have your essays all lined up to start taking calls, kind of thing, right? Like you're very selective about the customers and how you implement it. And then stealth means, okay, you can come buy our product now.
That's got to be. Yeah, that's got to be what it means, right? Because it was about as unstealthy as you could possibly be, because like LinkedIn just blows up, but they have great articles on supply chain. Everybody who works there is like, yeah, I just joined Endor. It's like, I know who you are.
Yeah,
I know what you're doing. I even knew you had 25 million before this announcement. So it's like, okay, I guess go check it out. I don't know if it's going to be product-led growth. It would be cool if there's a way, very much like what we do, to go take it for a spin. That'd be pretty sweet.
That would be cool. I did ping one of our friends, old friend Jamie, and asked if they would come and give a demo in the future. Will be very nice, we promise. But it'd be cool to see the product.
Yeah.
All right. And the next one, Immersive Labs.
Immersive Labs is based in the UK. When we were Stack Rocks, we had some great chats with their CEO about building in some training in tandem with Immersive Labs, and they were like, "Yeah, they're really keen." So I'm kind of blown away actually to see that 66 million in new capital. That's great considering the skills gap in cybersecurity. Like they've got some great offerings in that space. So pretty awesome.
I'm also just from a UK investment standpoint, you don't see a lot of startups in the UK and you don't see them growing faster than the US startups. Is that fair to say? Maybe, but you have a lot of talent, a lot of universities, a lot of diplomas per capita in the UK. So it's always nice to see that that's actually that money's heading over there. Well, money heads to England. Shocker. That should not be a new title.
Well, and it's also weird that it's in Bristol. It's not even in London. It's kind of in a more of a hipster part of the UK as well. But it is more like training and thought leadership. It's not like a startup with a product. Those have to come from the Bay Area or Israel. We know that.
Fair enough. We got two CVE/issues for you.
Now, what starts with the letter C?
Yeah, Windows issues. Shocker. All right.
Well,
I'll fight you for
got
it. Yeah, Kubernetes has a Windows running as root problem. Did you read through this one, Steve? I think you.
I read through it about 2 weeks ago, actually.
Yeah, yeah. It's a low CVSS score rating of 3.4. Look at that little shout out. Red Hat thinks it's a bit nastier than that with a CVSS score of 3.8. Still, Red Hat security team notes that it's both attack complexity and privileges required to pull off an attack are high. From my understanding is there's specific workloads that if you run it and you say run as non-root in the YAML manifest, it still has the chance of breaking out.
Still root.
Yeah, but there's the thing with security, with the security context, there's a couple different ways you can specify running as non-root. So it's not that simple. But yeah, Windows images and Windows containers are still in their infancy, I want to say, in terms of adoption. Where would you put that on the...
Me?
Yeah, like, I hear about it in customers. I just don't really see a lot of adoption on Windows containers in general.
I saw the only time I've seen people using Windows containers and I saw an effective use was at the edge. I saw some people do some very clever little things with teeny little Windows containers running Moby runtimes at the edge, and they were really small. And I was like, okay, that's cool. But you have like no security solution for that. And a very little support in terms of if this doesn't work. So I generally think when people start doing Windows containers, I'm like, oh, come on. It just feels like a bad idea.
Yeah. Not everything needs to be containerized.
Well, yeah, there's that too.
Yeah. All right, I think we have the last one, which is not the new stack. Yeah, it's the next one. Totus goes as leak. This isn't really a vulnerability, but the access key was exposed on GitHub when we talked about this 2 weeks ago. That sometimes people worry about vulnerabilities and all these issues, and really a lot of the code that is getting checked into GitHub have access keys or different environment variables in the code, and it's been publicly available for 5 years. So this is one of those things that we're like, we should probably put this in. It's not always a vulnerability that screws you over. This
could have gone anywhere. Like, this is the problem with this article is it's like it's news, it's WTF, it's a vulnerability. It's like it's almost like we need a face palm category now. Because it's like forgetting passwords in the code. Just a constant reminder, let's stop hard coding. 5 years. And what's amazing is that I've uploaded, you ever accidentally upload something that looks like a secret or a key or anything?
Yep.
I mean, GitHub already freaks out various
email
other
right
things. Yeah, there's just tons in Google, and there's so many things monitoring it for the good. How is that there? Anyway, all right. What time is it?
It's tool time.
Does everybody know what time it is?
All right, let me get Steve out of here so that I can present my findings. Today, we found Phalemon? I'm not exactly sure how.
Nobody knows how to say it. Put the phonetic spelling in the
Palaemon.
comments.
Yeah, it's a, let me get this up here. It's a cool little dashboard. So open source developer tool for monitoring Kubernetes clusters and error analysis. It's awesome because if you've ever worked or developed an app where, let's say there's memory and CPU limits and you go to deploy your app and it crashes, sometimes those logs do not get picked up fast enough by things like Prometheus, or they're extremely hard to search, right? You have Prometheus, you have a massive cluster, and then you have to go find this one log for a pod that you don't exactly know the additional letters and numbers that are added to it. So this is really useful to help developers specifically get the information that they only want to see and sort through it. Now, I do have a couple notes that we'll talk about, but it's pretty easy to get started. One of the issues that I have with it is it does need Prometheus setup. You do have to port forward it to your local host. So if you're a developer, you have to have the operations team that's willing to work with you on it. But OS Labs, and it's a beta. Palaemon, again, Electron-based developer tool. You need kubectl, Prometheus, and Prometheus port forwarded. And then you also need npm, npm start. You have to set it up, launching in production mode. And what that looks like is I have this tab, which built the app. Then I have this tab, which is consistently basically using the authentication to pull information from Kubernetes. Then I have a port forwarding tab that's still running. Also that I can maybe do a little bit over here. And I created not only an application, but an application that consistently uses more memory. So I think it uses like 100 megabits of memory every 10 seconds. And I put a memory limit on it. So you can see that I've had this running now for over a day. It's a deployment with 3 of them that are running, and it typically crashes after about 15 minutes. Now, with all that being said, here's the application. So you come through to this main dashboard and it says, pick a namespace, right?
Hold on. I'm only seeing your using Palaemon.
Why is it not swapping over? Maybe I shared the wrong window here. Hold on, let me try this.
By the way, there's a question from Geek Masher. Just said, Electron? What's Electron? It's an Electron-based. What did that mean?
I'm honestly not sure. I haven't heard of Electron, but I feel like I should know it.
Yeah.
Running an Electron app.
Either, so
I'm sure like an Electron app is like some sort of stack, and they've just called it Electron as a group. It's my guess. Worth doing a little research for me there, Steve. Back me up.
I'm doing it. Oh,
right.
JavaScript.
There it is. All right. Sorry, I was just showing the one Windows, like the Chrome Windows tab, and you didn't really get to see this whole aspect. So again, what that looks like is you have to build it using npm. Then you have to use kubectl to actually like run it and make sure that the authentication's set up. Then you have to have your port forward for 9090. That has to be set up properly by your operations team. Pretty easy. I mean, just a Helm install did it for me. It's port 9090 is fine for Prometheus. And then at the end, you get the dashboard, which I'll show you in a second. But I have this out of memory killed setup where I have a container that continuously goes up in memory. And also I put memory limits on it. Now, what that ends up getting into is this. So if you're a developer, it's pretty sweet. You choose a namespace to get started. I have this OOM test. If I go in here, I get all this information about these pods. So you can see that there has been this many pods in this namespace. Some of them don't exist anymore. But one of my issues is there should be some information to say this has been killed or not, right? So you can see this one's up and running right now. Mm-hmm. These ones have all been killed. Now,
so cause of death isn't obvious.
Yeah, cause of death isn't obvious. So I should be able to click this, or it should show me the actual reason why it died here, like the note. Right? Okay, this one died. Why did it die? Boom, 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 here. Instead, I have to kind of go, okay, well, there's this. And then, okay, well, which pod is what here? How do I find it? I can't control F on here. I can't search it. So I
You
have to kind of,
can't?
no, you can't search
Oh, it's
by the
embedded,
pod.
yeah.
So you got to scroll
Okay.
down. So it's fine if you only have one container that crashes or something like that, or you're only doing a small amount. But once you get, and you let this run for forever, you have to kind of clean it up. There's not an easy way to search through it. But it is nice in the fact that you could see the pods restarting here, right? After they get kicked out. So I have a 2000 megabit memory limit on it, except for this one. I did not put a limit on that one. Probably I don't know why that one's still there. I probably should check that out. What is also kind of annoying is there's nothing to click here. There's just severity of warning. Now, there are other events that happen in Kubernetes, which I guess you could search for. Like you could have critical events, alerts, debugs, but it's not exactly clear what gets you what. So if I do out of memory kills, why is nothing showing up here?
Oh,
right. So if I go to namespace and I go OOM test, and I go out of memory kills, so now it's there. Does that make sense? So here's what I think is happening. This is a small bug. Is if I do events and I go default, it shows the default namespace here.
mm-hmm.
If I swap over, I think it clears the namespace search. So now it's just looking in the default namespace so that when I go to OOM kills, there's nothing in the namespace.
Oh, yeah.
I think that there's something in the background where it's changing the search. And I personally think this namespace should not even be here. You should just come into a higher level dashboard and then go and just click at the top and say, okay, I care about like there should just be a namespace here.
Yeah, there's plenty of space.
Right? Where I can just jump through, it can automatically sort. And that way I know exactly what I'm searching for. Because if I go OOM test, why is namespace default showing up?
Yeah, it's not working there either. I mean, I saw OOM test is there, but if you scroll all the way down.
Yep. Yeah, and it's like automatically pulling the default errors when I don't really care about that namespace. So you have to scroll all the way down. And it's funny too, because I have Prometheus running and it's kicking out some of the other workloads because of the memory issue. So that's why I had to put the limit on it. So then it stopped kicking it out. But and then if you go to analysis, so this was the other thing. So if I go namespace and I go OOM test, cool. If I go to analysis and I want to search over the last, also terrible. I should not have to go and click these. It should be like a drop down, or it needs to be better. I don't want to be exact with the mouse. You know what I mean?
This is why Geek Masters had this. I don't like electronics.
Checks out. So if I search by 4 hours, nothing comes up, and it's saying select OOM kill pod to display data. Select it to display data. Okay, but how do I know? By default, the time interval is set to 5 minutes. To adjust the time, okay. I mean, I literally just had them get evicted, so something should be here. So my guess is like something's going on with the namespace search aspect, where it's just, and like I don't know why it's picking backend as the default.
It's just alphabetical order,
right?
Did you ever get this to work at all?
I never got the analysis to work.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, it's got a cool logo.
Yeah, and it's like the information here is actually pretty nice. It's just, I wish that it had this. It was able to pull the logs too. Maybe if you could correlate it with whatever logs were in that last 5 minutes and try to snap it up. It just kind of gives you the message in Kubernetes that you would get if you did a kubectl describe pod, right? It does give you the node. It does give you the last seen. It does give you the reason for getting evicted, which helps you search for those logs if you needed to. But it's not as information rich as I would have liked it.
Yeah, I would have loved to have seen. It's probably really hard, but the actual log, like, because that's the thing that just goes away. And if there was a way that it could almost do like a tail -100,
Yep.
and maintain a critical log. Like you don't have to keep the whole log, just keep the last 50 things that were in it.
Mhm.
So that when it dies, I can go, all right, well, what's the epic Python self-destruct that came out before the whole thing vanished, so I can see what I did. That would be pretty high value for me.
Yes, I completely agree. I also think it's a limitation with integrating with Prometheus, because Prometheus does not really pull logs unless you add Logstash to it or Loki, right? So it's just, I think, one of the limitations that they're probably working with. Yeah, it's a cool concept. I understand the reasoning for it, just to give it to developers and say, here, if you want to see what errors or why something isn't working in Kubernetes, you can just search by namespace. But I would probably just rather set up a Prometheus dashboard that filters for it and give it to the developer and just template it all out.
Seriously, you've already gone to the work to put Prometheus in there. Like,
yeah, why create another dashboard?
Yeah, I think I agree, but maybe they're on their way to something bigger and better that we don't know about. So
give them 6 more
watch the
months.
space. Give them 6 months. Yeah,
Mhm.
Nice one. Good demo. It felt like a hell of a lot of install work for a bit of a denouement.
It is surprisingly. I got it up and running. I don't know, within 5-10 minutes. There was a little bit of configuration, a couple updates to run, but I already have some of those tools locally, so
That's cool.
pretty cool. Yeah, Helm install Prometheus and making sure that was set up properly was probably the hardest thing.
Okay. Yeah.
But,
nice one.
yeah, thank you.
Another box ticked.
Yeah.
All right, and that's the end of our show. Wow, we actually got it into the hour. We probably could have thrown it. Some of the things we kicked out, we could have kicked them back in. Oh well.
Yeah, there's a link in the show description. You can always check them out if we don't get to something. There was one that we skipped, which was Microsoft not pushing updates to Russia, which was kind of interesting. And then they were trying to figure out how to get their Windows updates, and it's gonna be it's a fun world. All these politics and tech involved. So thanks for joining. The next show is going to be 2 Saturdays, right? I forget what
it will
day
be.
it is.
2 weeks time on a Saturday. We will be live in Toronto at your pad.
Yeah, at the pad. So probably not doing a tool time. I think we're just going to talk a lot about KubeCon, wrap it up. I'll probably have some StackRox gear. If you want to ping me, I'll have some leftovers. Otherwise, anybody watching, come find us, ping me. Hope to see you in Detroit.
All right. That's it. That's a wrap. My internet sucks. Sorry, I'm Steve Jaguar.
And I'm Mike Foster, and we'll see you next time.